going on, everybody? We back with yet another episode of With Time We Can. I just wanted to let you guys know that we're wearing all black today in honor of Mr. George Floyd's Memorial Day. May he rest in peace. Today's episode, I brought two great friends of mine and also two Philadelphia protesters. They both walked in a protest with me a couple days ago, and I just wanted to give them a platform to share their story. So to my right, I have Miss Rebekah, and then I have Jim, and we're just going to start with getting some background information on these guys, and then talk about their experience as protesters. So we'll start with you, Rebekah.
All right.
How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
All right. You want to tell the people where you're from?
I'm from North Carolina.
All right. And how was growing up in North Carolina as a Caucasian American?
Growing up in North Carolina was very different from the experience I have had living in Philly so far. I did not live in a very diverse neighborhood. That's not to say there weren't any diverse neighborhoods there, but the city that I grew up in seemed to be, at least by housing, very separated by different races.
Mm-hmm.
We have a train track in our town that kind of is like a separating line that, at least it feels like that often, of a lot of majority of white people live on one side and a lot of the major businesses on one side, and then the other side is mostly African American communities. And so that's not to say that there weren't people who all became friends and that there weren't good friendships through that, but I think it's very different to see coming to Philly that it was there's a lot more of a mix of things, and a lot more, I think, openness to just getting to know people who aren't just like you. It was very easy where I grew up to only stick with people who are very much like you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did have opportunities to get to know other people, but at the same time I think that as I was growing up, I very much I just wasn't really, my eyes weren't opened to a lot of things, specifically racism and microaggressions, and I think there were a lot of places where I myself was ignorant and still probably am, and I want to continue to grow in that, and just try to stamp that out. But I know that the way that I grew up did cause me, just the communities I was in and everything definitely caused me to see things with a certain lens that I think probably wasn't helpful for basically anyone of another race that I came in contact with.
No, that was great.
And then I don't know if talk about Philly now.
That was, you definitely explained that, but I wanted to get back to your family dynamics. So you grew up mom, dad. What type of household structure did you have?
Yeah, I grew up with my mom and dad. I have 7 brothers and sisters.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we had a big family all together. So I was homeschooled also. So that was another aspect of
you didn't tell me that.
I was homeschooled.
Right.
And so then that's another aspect where I didn't go to public school, where I was around a lot of other people who were not the same as me also.
Right.
But I grew up I felt very safe in my neighborhood. I never experienced having to have I could just at any time at night go through my neighborhood, not feel like I was going to be in danger of anything, whether that's police brutality or whether that's anything else. And so it just seemed like a very, it wasn't a gated community, but it almost kind of felt like that.
It's like a lack of better words, like a safe zone.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right, now we got a better understanding of that.
Mm-hmm.
So why Philly? What made you come over all the way up here?
So, I never wanted to live in a big city, but my cousin was moving his family up here to start a church, and he asked me to pray about moving here. He didn't want to just come alone and start something that big on his own.
Right.
So, so I prayed about it, felt like that was what the Lord wanted me to do, and moved up here.
Wow, okay.
So, no.
How long you been out here?
This is my 5th year.
Oh, 5th year, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. So how you feel about the city?
I love it. It's definitely grown on me. I thought originally when I moved here, I said I'll come for 2 years, and I thought I was out. I was like, I don't know about this. But I started teaching in my neighborhood, and then I love that and love the school that I'm at. Mm-hmm. So I think that played a big part, and just at the beginning getting used to things. But also, I mean, I love the city. It's
now, did moving to Philly expand your horizons with other races?
Absolutely. Yeah.
In what way? Like the neighborhood or the job aspect?
Or both. Yeah. Definitely neighborhood. I mean, I have a lot of neighbors who are not white, and then also at my job, something really cool that I experienced there was that I had some coworkers who were really amazing, and they also care a lot about Black Lives Mattering, basically.
Yeah.
And they taught me a ton about they had to be patient with me. And I know that can probably be very frustrating to feel like, oh man, I have to teach another person how I feel every day, and but I learned how to listen to what they needed to say and how they felt about things, and realized that was super important. And so, and also, got to hear them talk about, here's what a day in my life can be like. Here is something that I've experienced that frustrates me, but I've had to get used to it and figure out how to live with it. And that's something that you've never had to do, that brings on a heaviness of realizing wow, I actually have never even thought about having to feel any of those things.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you can acknowledge that, and I thank you, because I feel like the community can use more people with your spirit. Now, I want to get to you, Jim, before we get to the protest. Let me know, because I heard you from Vermont, man, and to be honest, I have no recollection of what goes on in Vermont. So,
nor does anyone else.
Yeah.
Vermont is not part of Canada. It is actually a state in the United States of America. Vermont is it's way up in the north. It borders Canada, and it is a part of New England. So really, just kind of when you think of the founding fathers, or when you think of that kind of stuff, New England, right? Like Philadelphia, New England, that area is all kind of there. Vermont is way up north, and we are. It's an incredibly rural community. I think the biggest city in Vermont is 100,000 people or something like that. There's only 600,000 or so people in Vermont. Growing up, it was really it was beautiful because it's so scenic, and there's lots of nature. But there was hardly any Black people or people of color. I can distinctly I can think on my hand how many Black people I knew growing up.
Wow.
Just nobody.
And just for the people, how many years were you in Vermont?
So I lived in Vermont 18 years. So when I was 18, then I went to college. And
wow.
Yeah. Wow. So, I didn't. I went to a private Christian school growing up, and then there was one Black girl in the middle school, and I was in high school. She was in elementary school. I was in middle school at the time. And then in my high school, I think there was maybe one or two. And so it was very, very white world. Honestly, it was a white community. I mean,
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
no diversity really. So.
Wow. So your experience with like other races for 18 years was just the Caucasian race. It wasn't nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I say, there may have been like one other, you know, like Asian American, you know, like, but I don't really remember. I think it was just, you know, I can think of like 3 people I knew that were people of color. So.
Okay. All right. So why Philadelphia?
Yeah, so I actually came to Philadelphia for college, and I went there because one of my friends from like the high school, the youth group I was in, he went to the school that I was going to, and so I just decided, yeah, Philly seems like cool. It's close to like it's this big city, and I went to school in like the Valley Forge area, but you know, so I was like, oh, I'll be close to this major city. I've never lived in a city. Like I said, there's more cows than people, so you know I'm crawling out of the woods to come into the city, and I'm like, this is gonna be really cool. So yeah, I came to Philly really for college, and then I stayed in the area because I had this like love-hate relationship with Philly. Like I didn't like it because I was like, oh, the city, I don't know, man. It's like, like you know, because like Philly, if you've been, you know, in the Philly area, and I'm really honestly, I'm pretty like I don't want to claim like being Philly because like I'm not. But you know, like I feel like Philly is like it's got this grit to it, and people are like they're like I feel like Philly's really authentic, and so like I feel like there was this like love-hate relationship with Philly, but there's something about Philly that just like grabbed your heart. And
It does.
You're like,
it
man,
does.
I'm going back to Philly.
I know, right?
So, yeah.
Feel good. Now in college, obviously in college is so many different types of people.
Yeah.
So tell me about, did you encounter black individuals in college?
Yes.
Tell me about the experience, man.
Yeah, so I actually lived on a floor in my dorm. It was called 24 at the time. And when I moved on to 24, my 2 roommates were white, and there was a couple other white guys on the hall, but like a lot of like, it was a really diverse hall. Like there was like, you know, there was black people and other people of color, like, and white people all in this dorm, and it was like I distinctly remember the moment where I met like my first like black friend.
Right.
I went up and I was like, "Hey, I'm Jim," you know, and like my friend was just like, "All right, cool, like, hey, what's up, man?" I'm like, "Who are you?" You know, and I'm like,
right.
You know, and I was just so eager to make friends with like really anybody, and but yeah, like so the dorm I lived in, or the floor that I was on, was like a pretty diverse floor, and it was I made friends with people from everywhere, from like Baltimore, from you know DC area, from Philadelphia, New York, and like black people, Hispanic people, etc. And it was one of the coolest, like some of the coolest years of my life, especially that first freshman year, because I had a community of people that just embraced me. I mean, just loved me for who I was and accepted me for with all my flaws. Because I mean, when you come from Vermont, where it's like there's literally nobody of color, and you go there, man, some of the stuff I was saying, you know, it's just like it was ignorant and you know, it's just out of pocket probably. But people were really patient and were listening and loved me and kept, you know, showing love to me in a way that was just completely. I mean, people just embraced you for who you were and loved you for who you were, and that was so cool to me. And so one of my friends, who you happen to be, you know, related to your brother, was he sat with me for like hours on end. I remember walking the campus with him, and he just explaining his life story, explaining, you know, systemic racism, talking about what, you know, microaggressions were, like just breaking stuff down in a way like he was educating me in a way that he didn't have to, right? Like that is not his responsibility, and he did that for me, you know. And like I'm not here to be like, oh, I have arrived, you know, because not even close, right? Like I literally am saying, like just this morning I had a phone call with a friend of mine who was like, Jim, something you said really hurt me, you know, and just being able to talk that through and listen and trying to learn, like, you know, how can I educate myself more and be better and
Right.
love deeper. Like, how does that? And having people like my friend Zay, who just loved me like that, it was incredible. I went really long. So
No, it's fine, man. And before we even continue, just want to shout out Zay, for educating Jim, because we definitely I commend you for listening, but we also need more teachers in the community to teach the differences and just give you an opportunity to take a stroll in his shoes, So shout out to my brother, man. Thanks a lot for that. All right, so that was powerful, Jim. And I appreciate that, man. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the protest now. As we stated in the beginning, these two walked alongside of me in the protest for Mr. George Floyd. So the first thing I want to ask is, both of you guys watched the video?
Yes.
yeah.
The video. All right, so Rebekah, you first. How did the video make you feel, seeing the cop kneeling on this man's neck for over 8 minutes?
It made me feel really angry. And I think that I wanted to feel a lot of shock, but the sad thing is that I didn't so much because of like the amount of police brutality that we've seen. And it's not, and I think in some ways it feels like we've seen more police brutality recently, but I think it's literally just like because of video and like people capturing it on cell phone and I remember my first thought was, man, how many times have things like this happened where no one is ever going to have people marching for them, or there's not going to be anyone who's angry about it because they didn't see it with their own eyes, so they didn't feel that anger,
Right.
So like thankfully there is that technology now, but it's also just so heartbreaking that anything like that happens.
How about you, Jim? How did you feel? And did you see the video?
I did see the video, yeah. And I mean, outraged and grieved, but I think more than anything, like what I thought of when I saw the video was like I genuinely, like I thought of my friends' stories who had told me about police brutality, who had talked about discrimination, who had talked about the ways that they had been profiled. And I think when I saw the video, my blood started boiling because I was so angry, but I started literally just like, it was like a replay reel, and I started thinking of all of like times where I had said things and done things where it's like, surely I'm not the one with the knee on that guy's neck, like, oh, that's not me, but I started thinking of the ways that my words had like carried weight and had hurt people from what I had said. And I started thinking of like how again, I think of my friends who talk about police brutality, and I started like just remembering those stories and thinking like, this is true, this is real. Wow. And it's like, and again, like you said, I wanted to feel in some ways it's like you want to be surprised that somebody would do that, but you're not surprised because it's like, this is America, this is what we've been experiencing, this is what we've been seeing in the news. But then to actually see that, like, just to hear my friends' stories and see and hear my friends' stories as that I was watching that video, I think is what was going on. So
wow, so it sounded like it really touched you guys. So Rebekah, I'll go back to you. So what motivated you? Because you're a Caucasian American. This is Philadelphia, it's not Minnesota. So it's not truly an obligation, but you made it an obligation, which is admirable. So what made you want to even go to the protest?
I think multiple things. I think just wanting to see change. Also just feeling like sometimes you feel like there are not clear ways that you can make change. I think a lot of the times it is seeing through personal conversations with people. Just like my coworkers educated me on a lot of things. I think that type of thing goes a long way, but I think there have to be other ways also, and seeing that as an opportunity for furthering change, hopefully. That was one reason, and another is, just kind of like Jim was saying too, is, I want not just the people who I'm friends with or coworkers with or I'm connected with in some way, but I want every Black person to understand that they don't have to fight this themselves, because I think it's been on the backs of Black people for hundreds of years. And I know that weight has to be huge, and I know there has been a lot of either silence or just maybe out of not knowing what to do, white people often don't do things, and so I always know that I could be in the wrong in some things that I try to do, but I also want to see, like, if I see an opportunity that seems like it's worth it and it's a good one, then and it's really going to be supported, then I want to do that.
Good. I like that, and thank you for showing up. Now, Jim, I want to ask you the same question. What made you feel obligated to walk with us in the protest in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so after I watched the video, I was, like I said, my blood was boiling. I was I was remembering these stories of, my friends and what they had told me, and I think I remember talking with my wife, and I was like, what should we do? Like, what can we do? And feeling this sense of like, there's nothing I can do. And then I remember thinking, everyone's posting on Facebook. I don't want to just like post another post that's like, whatever, right? Like just for, likes or something like that. Or to be like, I felt like, I was like, this, what am I going to do? Right. And then I remember I read a Facebook post from my friend from college, and essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, please speak up, white people. Say something. Let us hear you, because it means more than you know. And that was a moment where I said, all right, I don't have anything novel to say, but it's not about being new. It's about standing up and speaking in solidarity and just showing up and showing that you care. And so I have not done enough. I have not said enough. And I think for me, that when I read that post on Facebook, I was like, I have to do something. I have to say something. So I wrote a Facebook post, and then I said, all right, I'm gonna figure out where a protest is. So I texted you, and I said, because I saw you on Facebook at a protest, and I was like, I bet Brian knows. So I texted him. I said, Brian, do you know where the next protest is? And you're like, I got you, bro. And then
that's how it happened.
So we went, and and it was incredible. And
Okay. Now, Rebekah, now back to you. Now, how did you feel once you were at the protest? Because protests can be very intense. I know they preach being peaceful, but oftentimes it goes left, and just the atmosphere just gets real tight, intense, and dark, and now it's chaotic. But talk to me about the peaceful part first. How was it walking in solidarity with people of all races for the same cause?
First, I did want to say it is important to speak up, and it's cool too, knowing your background of being from Vermont. You probably are connected to so many people on social media that maybe are in the same place that you were in before, and probably are seeing things from you and maybe other people who have left Vermont at this point. And maybe it brings awareness to them in some way. So. So the protest, it it was kind of overwhelming because I had gone to one on Saturday, but it was not as large as this. This was pretty huge, and I think just the amount of people there was amazing. And then also like the way that people all throughout were there to just help. Like they had water bottles, they had food, like whatever it is that you would need, everyone was like making sure everybody was okay. And people also were very respectful when there would be someone who had the loudspeaker and they wanted to say, like have like a speech or something like that. That was really awesome. And even when people couldn't hear, they weren't, they weren't talking, everybody was silent. And then it was just getting to walk throughout so much of the city, starting near Old City and Independence Hall, which to me was just crazy to even walk by that and be protesting something like this, because that's where that's the whole point of everything that happened in Philly at the very beginning, is that we would have a free country, and they were trying to get away from a tyrant king, and it feels like there was freedom created for some people, but not for all. So walking through there, and then just seeing everyone so worked up, but also peaceful. Everyone had lots of like anger, obviously, outrage, like Jem said, and yet they knew it's not going to be helpful if we resort to violence right now. We want to be heard, and in order to do that, we are going to protest peacefully. And it's wild seeing just the lines of police that are along the way, and there were definitely people saying yelling things at the police, but there was no violence there. And so I don't know, that was really cool, because there was clearly opportunity for there to be clashes there, and there weren't. And just going by City Hall, and I don't know, it was really cool. It was very powerful.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, when I got there, I wasn't really sure what to expect, because I'd only been to one other protest, and it was much smaller.
Okay.
And so when I got there, it was powerful. You could feel the energy from the moment you got there.
Right.
And I instantly knew I had made the right decision. I was like, I'm glad I'm here. And as I think what was really powerful is when we began to start walking, and we're walking, and I had my sign and you had your sign, and we're marching together. And what was really cool was hearing the different protests, hearing the different chants that were going out. And I grew up in the Pentecostal tradition, where when you pray, it's like people just kind of do the popcorn prayer, and it's kind of like somebody will pray, and then somebody else, the Spirit moves, and somebody else feels led to pray. And it was kind of it's like this expression of what people are feeling, and just listening, just taking a moment in the protest to just to listen, just what were people saying, and to hear the what were people speaking from their heart, and what was near and dear to them. And so hearing George Floyd, and and hearing people screaming out about police brutality, but then hearing people screaming Black Lives Matter, and just whatever it may be, people were chanting these different things. And it was really cool, because I feel like you got a part of what people were feeling, and you got to hold that for a moment and sit with that and listen. And so the protest was really peaceful, and it was really powerful to be in solidarity, standing next to people who were white and black and Asian, etc., and being in that space where it was seeing Philly that united.
It was.
And to be able to, to walk we walked a long ways. I pulled out my app afterwards, and I was like, dang, I really burned my calories today. We walked so far.
Right.
And it was such positive energy. It was so cool.
That's great. Yeah. Now, just staying on the protest topic,
sure.
I'll stick with you for this one and then go back to you, Rebekah. So what were some of the negative things? What were some of the things you didn't like about the protest that we went to? It could be from people that were at the protest, the protesters, or the police. Like, what are some of the things that really just rubbed you the wrong way while you were out there, if any?
Well, I mean, I think honestly it was probably like the end, where we got to the bridge and, you know, people started going on the highway and people were just kind of hanging out on the bridge, and some people decided, okay, I'm gonna leave now because they felt like, you know, okay, protest is over. Some people started going on the highway, and it was, you know, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like there was like thousands of people there. It was insane.
Yeah.
And what I didn't like was, I guess, just that, I mean, we're all kind of hanging out, you know, protesting on this bridge, and all of a sudden you just hear like a bam, you know, and then it's followed by another bam, and you know, there's this kind of shake, and you look, I'm not in the military, I don't know, but it was like maybe a flashbang grenade, I don't know. It was a very loud, like you just saw police in full-on riot gear start throwing like tear gas and these flashbang grenades, and just like, so, I mean, I was just so perplexed. I was so confused. I was like, why are you doing this? What's going on?
Right.
And, you know, I don't know, because, I mean, I was right there, you know, I can only be in one place, but I was just disappointed, really, to see kind of that show of, like, aggression towards, like, what was so peaceful, to see, like, and it quickly, I mean, it was quickly turned to pandemonium.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like just the drop of a hat, and all of a sudden people are sitting there with signs, and all of a sudden, boom, signs drop, and people are dipping like everywhere. And so I think I was just disappointed to see the way that the protest ended in that way. I thought it kind of like, it was hard not to like walk away from that protest and be like, just like, just saddened, you know? But
I agree. Rebecca, how about you?
So the negatives start on the bridge as well, I think. And I think one of the weirdest things to me was that, you know, when everyone was walking out on the highway, that was peaceful still. The cars were stopped, they were honking, like cheering on. People got out, sat on their cars and videoed and chanted with everyone, and it didn't seem, from what I could tell, that there was anger on that side of things. So, you know, it was peaceful. They were walking and chanting, and then you just see the tanks rolling in, and no announcements that I heard of this needs to be over. Also, it wasn't curfew yet, so technically, I don't know why it would have had to be over. And just all of a sudden, you know, the tanks were there, but then they just started shooting out tear gas and flashbangs, whatever else it was. And I thought I was probably, you know, I hadn't done anything violent, so I was just there, and I like took a picture of it, and then like quickly realized I'm not as far away from the tear gas as I thought. So I was tear gassed and like start running, and everyone starts running because it's all catching up to everyone, and you kind of are blindly running because you got tears streaming down your face. You can't really tell if your eyes are, you can't breathe, like, and then as some people were standing, they saw that people were running towards them, and so they were standing with water and like milk and other things to like help people who had been tear gassed. So they poured water in my eyes, and as they were pouring water in my eyes, people started yelling like, "Get down, get down, get down," because on the highway, which was right by the parking lot that I was at, there was a tank, and one of the guys had come out of the top of it with his gun and was pointing it at everyone in the parking lot.
Whoa.
And in the parking lot, there were no police, so there was no way for us to, even if we were going to be violent to police, there were no police to do anything to. And everyone in the parking lot was running, and most had been tear gassed, and so we weren't in a position to do anything that would have been inciting violence. And so it was wild. Everyone ran behind cars, and he continued to keep his gun pointed at the parking lot, and then everyone ran farther past, and then we're able to take care of the people who were tear gassed. So like just having to drag people along who couldn't really
Even
see. Yeah. So that was really wild to me, because I knew I hadn't done anything, and I hadn't seen anyone else do anything to bring that on, and I also hadn't heard it announced that people needed to disperse, and so it just felt like a very helpless situation, and it felt like, truthfully, like they just wanted to silence the voices of the protesters, you know, and I know that there have been violent protests, but it seemed like, you know, they kind of wanted it to seem like this was violent when it wasn't.
When it wasn't, yeah.
Because they brought in like full on, it just looked like the military came in, you know?
Yeah.
So like you don't need that at a peaceful protest. Maybe they sit way far out if you don't need them, but
right.
they brought him in like they were sure they were going to need him.
Well, and it was confusing because I mean it really was like we were all walking, and then all of a sudden you just see like somebody just flip open the door of this armored car, you know, just lob a grenade or whatever it is, and you're just like, wait, what just happened?
And like right as that was happening, I was with a bunch of people who were all kneeling. Yeah. Like all around the armored cars, people were kneeling, either kneeling, standing, or walking. I didn't see anyone running, like, didn't look like someone had done anything crazy and was running away from it. And so it was wild to see people kneeling and tear gas being shot out at them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just gotta take a deep breath for that one, because it was very hard to experience firsthand just that unnecessary force for a group of peaceful protesters. So I do want to ask you guys, do you think it was worth it? Like, because of the negative aspects, would you ever do it again, and was it worth going to the protest? Whoever wants to answer this one.
Yeah, I would do it again. I went to one yesterday, and that one stayed peaceful. It was also huge. It was so many people. So that was really like encouraging to see that, you know, after the one going so badly on Monday, that there was still, I know there was one Tuesday, which I wasn't at that, but you know, to see how many people were out at this one, and it was very organized too. Like they were very adamant about, we're going to be peaceful. They had bikers on the outside to kind of protect everyone walking. So I would go to, I'm planning to go to one tomorrow too. So absolutely. And I think the more people, the bigger of an impact that it has. And yeah, it might be an inconvenience to the city, but Black people have been inconvenienced every day of their lives, you know, so I think that it can't measure up, you know, to say that, you know, people, I think it's definitely worth it, and I think it's okay to inconvenience some police officers or the city or whatever it is that needs to be, so that maybe people will pay attention. Listen.
Thank you for that. Yeah. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience. It was really positive. I would definitely go again and hope to. And I mean, it's again, I think, you know, it's about, like, for me, I think it's about like continuing to educate myself. Like the next, you know, event I go to, I want to be more educated about like America's history, about what's really happened, and I want to go and be more aware and prepared and stand in solidarity, because I think that's a big part of it. It's like, I think right now, especially for white people, like it's about using this platform of privilege to then like talk to one another, especially like to other white people, and say like, you know, what are we doing? How are we standing up for others? You know, how are we using our places of privilege, and how are we, you know, to communicate like real change and real needs? Like, are we, you know, what are we doing? You know, and not just like protesting, but I think like, you know, donating. And so I think something even too, like my wife and I have been doing is like thinking through like, okay, like learning more about like what are the best ways that we can give money, and like, you know, like what books should I be reading? Because again, like I think it's just important to emphasize like it's not on Black people to educate white people about racism and about how we as white people benefit from a racist system. You know, it's not. It's on us to learn and to grow, and it's something that I am like very clearly in the beginning stages of, and trying to learn more and grow more, and just be better and be more like Christ. I think to love people unconditionally.
Wow, that's wise words, man. And I know you said you're in the beginning phases, but you're so farther than what you think, you know. And I commend both of you guys. And I'll just have one final question for the viewers. You probably already answered this question, but I'll ask it again just in case, you know, the message wasn't clear here. What is your obligation to Black people?
I think a lot of what Jim was just saying is educating yourself. There are so many resources, and I mean, we have the internet, so there's really not an excuse to stay ignorant. And I think, you know, that requires putting your pride aside and having the humility to say, yeah, I've been wrong about things, or you know, I've allowed myself to be blind to this, or I haven't listened. And so I think, yeah, educating yourself and listening, and I think supporting the Black community, whether that's Black-owned businesses or whether it's literally your friends and whatever it is that they're going through, and just being open to being called out too, because it isn't any Black person's responsibility to educate us, but like I think it's very important to be open to, if they're willing to, you know, listen and be okay to feel super uncomfortable and maybe feel like, like I did some stuff that I don't, you know, maybe I've said things, maybe I've acted in certain ways that weren't good, and, you know, kind of like, I think we kind of have to get over ourselves a little bit. That's a little bit of it, is like, you don't need to prove that you've been right or that you care, and you can show that you care by your actions and listening.
That's good. Thank you. About you, Jim?
Yeah, I think, like you said, you know, educating ourselves, speaking to our friends, our family members, you know, and calling out racism when we see it, recognizing that we as white people benefit from a racist system, but also recognizing that, like, you know, we have racism. Like we white people are racist, and it's not like, and I know like for a lot of people, when they hear that word, they think like of like, you know, segregation, and they think of like, well, I'm not actively, like, again, I'm not the one with the knee on that person's neck, and yet it's like, no, you may not be, but again, we're born into a system that is perpetuating violence and perpetuating racism. And so there's, you know, there's a great book on this, White Fragility. I'm just, you know, I just talked about this today, and I was reading, you know, watching some videos on this, but also recognizing that, I think like for me, something I've been learning too is like coming to terms with like, you know, not asking and expecting Black people to educate me, but also, you know, being mindful of like ways that I am perpetuating, you know, racism or again, microaggressions, you know, being like, you know, like when you have a question about race, or, you know, or you're like, oh man, I don't know what I should say or do, you know, instead of like, you know, I think, you know, our initial inclination is like, oh, I'm gonna call my black friend, you know, it's like that's not their responsibility, you know, or you're whatever, you're posting on Facebook, but it's like, but then what are we doing after that? And I think even that's a question I'm asking myself is like, what am I doing? Like this is the, you know, the peak of like this moment for right now, right? You know, we're in a very incredible moment in one way, but also this horrifying moment in another way. And yet, what are we gonna do after this? I think it's something I'm asking myself, is like, because we as people are fickle. We're gonna forget. And so how are we not going to forget? I read a quote today that was talking about, it was an article I was reading on white guilt. And one of the things it said is like, you can't feed the poor with guilt. The guilt, like the poor cannot eat guilt. Right. You know, and those who are marginalized, those who are discriminated against, those who are oppressed can't eat guilt. But, you know, they can eat bread. They can receive support through dollars that we're giving. You know, they can see change through legislation. They can, you know, they can see that when you're, you know, protesting, they see that in solidarity, whatever, you know, whatever that may be. And so I think there are like action steps we can take. And I'm still, I don't know, I don't want to like sit here and like be like, oh, here's all the things you can do, because like quite frankly, again, I'm new, like I'm learning and I'm growing.
Very well put. And I also feel like I'm very hopeful for that change. You know, I'm optimistic by nature, but I felt proud to be black, you know, during these protests, regardless of the negative aspects of it. I felt empowered for the first time in 28 years of my life. I felt empowered walking alongside of black people, white people, Chinese people, Arab people, Jewish people, whatever, from all nationalities, races, religious backgrounds, came out to support one of mine, you know, and that really did something to me as a black man, and it gave me hope for, you know, better days and just you know, signs of a better future for my child, you know, and future children. So I just want to humbly thank you guys for coming to provide With Time We Can this amazing episode. I wish you guys nothing but the best, and another episode in the books, guys. We out.